Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Tough Talking Thursday. Tough Talking Thursday comes your way every Thursday at 7 p.m. right here on Focus on Liberia, and we are broadcasting from Atlanta, Georgia. In tonight's edition of Tough Talking Thursday, we're going to be looking at few questions here on how to move Liberia forward. My guest, we have Ambassador Nathaniel Milton Barnes. He is joining us tonight to discuss how to move the country forward. Recently, he published a book and he said Liberia is in trouble. And so I have called the rest of the team so that we can see the trouble and how best to move the country forward. Ambassador Barnes, welcome for the first time on Tough Talking Thursday.
Thank you very, very much. I'm very happy to be here, Dennis. I'm quite pleased to be in the presence of such an esteemed a group of panelists. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Next, joining us from Philadelphia is former TRC Commissioner and also journalist Massa Amelia Washington. Massa, welcome to Focus on Liberia.
Thank you, Dennis. It's a pleasure always to be on your show.
Thank you. Next, I have Mr. Mohammed Sharif. He's a product of Waplo Institute all the way from Kilipo, Kanwekan. He's also FOL political analyst. Mr. Sharif, welcome to Focus on Liberia.
Thank you, Dennis. It's always great to be here.
And it should be noted that Sharif and I crossed paths in Zerekore in the early 1990s when we were there as refugees. Mr. Sharif, I was thinking about Zerekore and I remember Horoya, and you were right there in Dorota.
Yeah. Yes. I was also in Horia. I was also in Horia. Yes, that's right.
Oh, okay, great.
That's right.
Next, we have Mr. Carl Famler. She's our public policy analyst. She's also a historian. Carl, welcome to Focus on Liberia.
Thank you. It's always my pleasure to be here.
Last but not the least is a veteran police officer, and he's a veteran law enforcement officer, Mr. Wilmot Wetikuni. He is FOL Chief Political Analyst. Mr. Kuni, welcome to Focus on Liberia.
Thank you, Dennis. Happy to be here.
We want to welcome all our viewers from across the globe. Most of the time we hear about the issues in Liberia, ranging from bad roads. I'm all the way from Sino County. By the time of the rainy season, that place is cut off. We also have the electricity problem right now in Monrovia. They say they are rationing it. So if one side have current, the other side does not have power. There is crumbling infrastructure. If you look at Tubman High, the University of Liberia, infrastructure crumbling, especially after the war. We see the rape epidemic, the Zogo crisis, somebody may call it. The city is overcrowded, rural-urban migration, and all these problems. The city is swallowed by trash. Monrovia now is filthy. Prices are high, and the cost of living also high. That does not commensurate with salary. Unemployment is on the rise. These are all the problems that the country faces. Well, what can we do about this problem? As I said earlier, we're going to be looking at a few questions here, and let me put them on the screen for you. And we want our viewers also to join us and ponder over these questions. What is wrong with Liberia? What are the key problems that the country faces? Where do we want Liberia to be? Each and every one of us, even if you are watching us, where do we want the country to be and how do we get there? Why have we been stuck for so long? What have we tried? Those before us and even this generation, what have we tried? Why did it or didn't it work? Those are the questions we're going to be grappling with. And I want to first introduce Ambassador Nathaniel Barnes. Ambassador Barnes, even in your book, you agree with me that we have problems. You say Liberia is in trouble. I want us to start from there. What's the trouble and how can we fix this trouble?
Well, thank you so much. Again, you see, I got my pen and paper and everything because I'm so impressed by the panelists that I intend to take notes because I'm sure as a result of this, we should have some idea of potential solutions. But when one talks about the issues and challenges and problems of Liberia, rhetorically, it's probably easier to talk about what are not the problems, okay? But the problem basically, corruption, mediocrity, lack of adequate good school system, weak justice and security system, poor infrastructure, as you mentioned, poverty, poor management of our natural resources, growing food insecurity. lack of basic social services. You can go on and on and on and on. But as I pondered your questions that I had seen, I said to myself, what are the potential solutions? And I think the solution fall into three general categories. The first one is reconciliation. The second one is governance. And the third one is innovation. Okay, so let me just take a few minutes and go through each of those as I see it. Liberians, we must cultivate a unified and reconciled identity. Right now, there is no common thread or commonality between Liberians that make us all a unified one people, a one nation. So we have to work very, very hard towards that. What is it that unified? What is it that makes us Liberian, other than being from one of the 16 ethnic groups? What is it? We need to reconcile as a people. Once we do that, then we begin to formulate our ideas based on that unity in diversity. Okay, but to do that, we need resolute leaders that are courageous and capable. Okay, so under that reconciliation thing is we need to make sure we get together as a people, make some fundamental determinations as to what we want, and then try to select or elect a leader or leaders that will take us there, that will lead us and not rule us. Okay, we need a new breed of leaders, okay, that are simply more than politicians. I've said over and over again that there's a distinct difference between politicians and leaders. Generally speaking, in the Liberia experience, politicians have one tool and one tool alone to address and resolve issues. It's called politics and political rhetoric. Leaders, on the other hand, okay, for them, politics is one tool, but they have an array of tools available to address the various issues and hurdles that our society may be confronted by. We need to look at that, okay? It's a fact. Look, if you talk to any Liberian person, regardless of social standing, location, gender, whatever, they more or less understand and know our problems. They know. They will. You ask a typical Liberian person in the marketplace, where are we, Liberia? You need to have 2 hours because they can spend all that time telling you what they think the problems are. Okay, but we must come to understand something. The problem is not the predicament. It's not the problem. Finding the solution to the problem is the problem. And we can only do that with effective leaders. Okay, so that's the issue of reconciliation. We must reconcile ourselves as one people, regardless of ethnicity, social standing, whatever, okay, and focus on a role of creating an environment where we select leaders because we are all leaders. Every Liberian has power. We need to make sure they maximize and utilize that power wisely for our benefit in the long term. So that's reconciliation. The second issue is governance. We got a serious problem in Liberia with governance, and we can apply the issue of governance as a solution. Okay. Number one, our government is, and this is not in any particular order, by the way, our government is too centralized. Because we are so centralized, okay, the people, the very people that we are supposed to be serving are isolated. They do not participate in governance. They do not participate in determining their destiny and their future. For example, the superintendent of a county is appointed from Monrovia by the president of Liberia. Okay. One asks the question, well, where is the loyalty of that individual? Of course, it will be to Monrovia, the president's mansion. If we allow those in the counties whose destiny are at stake to select who their leader will be, vis-a-vis the superintendent and the other municipal leaders, they feel they have a say in what's going to happen. The other thing is the leader, that superintendent, believes that his responsibility then is to the people. And if he does not perform, he will have to answer to them. So we are just too centralized, and we need to do something about decentralizing government, empowering people to participate in the issue of governance. Okay, we need a well-developed county development plan. We have, but the county development plan, again, I developed in Monrovia and managed from Monrovia. Give it to the counties and let them manage it. They know best what their issues and their problems are. But that's a clear example of the issue of a centralized government and the way we need to go around it. Okay, we need, under the governance solution, we need an effective and sustainable justice and rule of law platform that is fair, equitable, and intolerant of impunity. You stated, Dennis, earlier about the situation of rape and these unexplained murders that go away with impunity. The law must be applied fairly, equally, and without bias, regardless of who you are. It must be applied to all. Okay, perpetrators, offenders, all the people that did these things or do bad things. Okay, they need to serve their terms and pay the consequences of their actions. Right now, we don't have that. So a governance structure around that is part of the solution. Okay, we must reduce the size of government. The government of Liberia is the largest employer in Liberia. Why? The largest employer in Liberia, probably the least effective. Okay, but we must reduce the size of government, make government lean and mean. Of course, the issue becomes political. Well, what you do when you fire all these people, you inflate the unemployment line. There's a way to address that. Okay. In the process of reducing the size of government, making government more effective and more responsive, okay, we have to simultaneously empower the private sector so that they grow and they can absorb whatever access the government rids itself of. Okay, so the unemployment situation would not be seriously, severely impacted. Okay. We need to ensure that we implement a way under governance to initiate a process that will ensure we recruit the best and the brightest to serve in government. So how do you do that? We need to move away from the institutional political behavior of appointing partisans to important government positions. Okay, I suggested one day at a governance meeting in Monrovia, we need to say from assistant minister down should be technocrats. In other words, political appointees are only the minister and maybe the deputy minister. But we need to task the civil service agency to recruit, vet, hire, and place people where they bring their best skills, and they are also monitored. So the issue becomes, it's not a matter of what your political affiliation is, what your ethnicity is, what your gender is. The fundamental question becomes, can you produce? Can you do this? And you are monitored in such a way that if you don't do it, you get out. We'll find somebody else. So we must find a way to reduce the size of government, retain our best and brightest, and incent them appropriately. Okay, but we need to move away from this issue of political appointees and move towards a paradigm of technocrats to run our government in the issue of governance. That's the second piece, governance. The third piece is innovation. Okay, we must find, I beg your pardon, we must find, develop and implement innovations outside of the box thinking. Okay, use indigenous solutions to our economic, social, and political challenges with a focus on effectiveness, flexibility, and sustainability. Okay, how do we do that? Number one, under innovation, kill corruption.
That is still under governance, right?
No,
It's a part of governance. Now I'm under innovation, but we need to find innovative ways. And one of the ways to be innovative is to kill corruption. Corruption in Liberia is not only institutional and systemic, it's psychological. People think it's okay to steal. People think it's okay to take something that doesn't belong to them. Okay, so we must stop corruption dead in its track. We must kill it. Okay, we must empower Liberians under innovation. find a way to empower them by providing better education for them. Our school system have for many, many generations been based on the American school system where you go from grade school to elementary to junior high to senior high to college. We need to augment it, take it apart, take the paradigm apart, and build a system based on our needs. Vocational training, we just started to do that, okay? But we need to empower people, and that's the way we do that. We need to encourage and incent Liberian businesses and entrepreneurs and investors, okay? The advanced countries of the world, they do set-asides in their country. Now they argue that we shouldn't do set-aside. Get away from here. We will do what is necessary that meet our national interests.
Yes.
You tell me, well, you're part of the World Trade, you're part of the World Trade Convention, you're not allowed to do this. I, as a government, will do what is necessary for the benefit of the people of Liberia. Okay, we must create jobs.
Let's run through your last last two steps.
I was soon finished. I got one more thing. Okay, we need to create jobs. We need to invest in renewable, sustainable projects. Invest in human resources. Invest in agriculture. Okay. If we don't do that, we're going to be in trouble. We're going to continue to be in trouble. Okay. And finally, we must recalibrate and implement a comprehensive, effective infrastructure initiative. We must create a sustainable healthcare delivery system focused on accessibility and preventive healthcare, along with a certain amount of flexibility. Okay, I've tried to capture all of these things. We all know what the problems are, but if we put them into those three categories: better governance, better innovation, okay, and better reconciliation. Reconciliation being first, governance and innovation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Massa, you heard the ambassador.
Yes, of course.
Yeah. What's your reaction?
Well, Ambassador Bounds seems to be very busy. He's been talking a lot. And when I say been talking a lot, it's not in a negative tone at all. You've been really articulating your own perspective as to what you think we need for the new Liberia. And I do agree with the points that he's made. And he's made some serious quotations. Like, for example, one of the quotations he's made that I like is that, which he has clarified here, is that corruption is psychological. That is very important for Liberians to understand, that as he just articulated it. And he's also, on the issue of reconciliation, I do agree with him, but then also I have this take. I stand to be corrected, but from my experience, I'm beginning to think that I do not think that all of us as Liberians have had one agenda or a shared goal. I don't think we have had, or we have identified a shared goal as Liberians. And the reason I say so is because all through the years, we speak about reconciliation and we speak about putting Liberia first. We speak about ending corruption and addressing impunity and giving people opportunities, but it has not happened. It's because we want, as a people, in order to have the same agenda, we must be able to see each other humanistically. That is, we must be able to see each other as having value. Because when you see another person as a human being like yourself, who has value, and when you see that person as a Liberian and not necessarily this person is Gola, or this person is a Basta, or this person is Pele, when we as a people can humanize each other, and in humanizing each other, we can identify, we can see the value that each person brings, then we will begin to appreciate each other, and then we will begin to incorporate each other into our national planning. But I don't think we have been able to do that as a country, and I think it's happening forever and ever. And I think over the years, it just got worse. It got worse over the years. So even though we know that some of the factors and elements that have divided Liberians. Some of those things were there. Some of them might have been lying dormant. But we know that over the years, based upon experience of the 1980 coup, experience of war and everything, we have gotten more divided as a people. I will tell you a short example. I love to give examples. I went to, those of you who know me know that I went to school at the St. Teresa's Convent from kindergarten all the way. And we had different categories of girls in the school, in the entire school, and even in my class. But there were one of my classmates that I knew. I met her in kindergarten, and we were close all the way. I had no idea this girl was from Nima County until the coup happened. It was shocking. All of a sudden, people made it a big deal to be from this ethnicity and from that ethnicity, and then the war just completely hit it out of the ballpark. So what I'm saying is that, events over the years and over the decades divided us more than uniting us. And if we can work together as Liberians to have that shared agenda, because everybody, we never agree on anything as Liberians. You call a national conference right now, everybody will go there with all the speeches and everything, and at the end of the day, hell about confusion. We never agree on anything. We have to find, like Ambassador Barnes has said, we have to find that one thing, the most important things to agree on. It's okay to disagree because, we are diverse. Our country is a land of diversity, and it's beautiful. It's beautiful that I'm not called, she's not me, I'm not Dr. Sherry and everybody else. But within that diversity, we have more strength when we come together. So for me, I don't think we have been able to identify and then harness those traits that humanize us as Liberians and that make us proud to be Liberians, that make us want to recognize each other. So I think we should learn to be, again, I come from a social work background as well. That's what I have my master's in. But I think if we learn to slow down and see each other as Liberians, forget the stereotypes. We stereotype each other too much. The labels, we label each other too much. And we need to stop doing that. And I was saying to one of my friends the other day that said, all of us should make a conscious decision to learn to make friends or appreciate people from other ethnicity. For example, if you grew up, with another set of class, when I say set of class, like you grew up, you went to different schools, and maybe you had different set of friends, and maybe your family status was different, maybe socially, maybe educationally, or maybe even tribally. I think it will help this new Liberia that Ambassador Barnes has so eloquently speak of, this dream of this new Liberia. I think it will help if those of us now who are educated and who really want Liberia to come together, it will help if we can slow down and try to learn other people, make friends with people from other ethnicity. Don't just sit down and say, oh, everybody from Nima County is a rebel. That's not true. Don't just sit down and say the Goda people, they mean. That's not true. Let's make it a conscious effort as all part of this Liberianization to learn each other, make friends across the aisle, get to know each other, learn to eat food from other tribes and other ethnicity. We need to really humanize each other as Liberians to be able to work on this reconciliation. And then the Ambassador Barnes, just so before I end my point on this reconciliation, I'm glad that you're speaking about reconciliation. I worked on the TRSC, so I'm sorry, guys, it's not a TRSC forum, so I'm going to limit it. But the TRSC was also for reconciliation. So Ambassador Barnes, I don't know where you stand on the implementation of the TRSC report, but it's something that is dear to my heart. So we will hope that Liberians like you, like yourself, who are vying for office, we will hope that people like you will also consider the implementation of the TRSC recommendations, especially those recommendations that I consider soft and friendly recommendations. We have more than 100 recommendations on a wide range of subjects, including Liberianization and different. So I hope, Ambassador Barnes, people like you will take time, go back, revisit the TRC, look at the recommendations. Don't only think about those, controversial recommendations, but look at those recommendations that really, really focus on reconciliation and see how, you can, formulate some of your policies around those recommendations so that, Liberia can be able to come together and reconcile. Thank you so much, Dennis.
Thank you. Let me go to Mr. Kone. Mr. Kone, before you react to Ambassador Barnes' points, I want to bring up the issue of reconciliation that he said. Is it a requirement? Do we really need it? I mean, are things going to get in place if we have the right economic environment and so on and so forth? Because in my neighbors here, even though the experiences will be different, but we don't hear about reconciliation so much here in America. It's always the rule of law. What do you make of reconciliation as a key ingredient of what is wrong and how we can fix our country? Mr. Kone.
Well, Dennis, first of all, I would like to take this time to extend thanks to Ambassador Barnes for his service to country, especially during his tenure as Liberia ambassador to the United States. In addition to fostering government-to-government interaction, I think Ambassador Barnes was one of the few ambassadors that actually engaged the various Liberian community organizations. And I'm a witness to that because at that time I was in community service. So Ambassador Barnes, I want to thank you. You elevated the Liberian diaspora. I think you coined the word the 16 counties for us. And there were many other things you did in the interest of the diaspora. So, but to just speak to the question that Dennis asked, the issue of reconciliation, the issue of the common thread, I think we are all familiar with our division as a people, the historical division of our people. For some reason, at any point in time, there is this division of Liberians for whatever reason. We can go back to the Americo-Liberian versus Congo divide. And now there is this new division of diaspora base versus home base. So for some reason, we never found a reason to come together as one people. But the thing is, we need to ask ourselves what drive these divisions. You see in your neck of the woods, they're not talking about reconciliation. So let's look at the Liberian, the thing that promote the divisions in our Liberian system. It is all based on exclusion. Whenever we divide ourselves, it's either we try to exclude one sector for power and for economic reasons. So for some reason, we have not determined that all of us can move forward, can be better off in Liberia as one people. One set of people always want to take the position to exclude other set of people. I mean, it's unimaginable. The Liberian diaspora that support the Liberian economy with almost 20% of GDP. Everything that the diaspora does for Liberia. There are people in the country that don't even acknowledge that. The only time they stand up is to create these exclusionary laws for Liberians that live here. They put in these restrictions. In fact, some of them want to make it constitutional. And then you ask yourself, why are they doing it? If it is not for power, it is for economics. So we haven't actually found the common thread. We haven't actually found the things that unite us. And we get divided because we want to exploit one another for economic reasons, for political reasons, until we can recognize that our fate as a nation tied together, and we need the contribution, the participation of all of us. The country is not going to go anywhere. We're going to keep having these problems. And the ambassador talked about one of the issues that dear to my heart. You say you lost me on that issue, but no. The issue of decentralization. I've always decried the highly centralized power structure we have in our country, where you find a center behaving like a predator on the rest of the country. Monrovia don't generate anything besides the free port of Monrovia. All of the resources from the regions of the country. But everything that is done is in support of the centralized power structure in Monrovia. And we have to find a way at that. During the past administration of Madam Salif, they devoted a considerable length of time to the issue of decentralization. At best, I think people still playing lip service to it. I understand there's a decentralization bill that was passed, but it still has provisions that are beholden to the central government. So these things don't foster development. The overcrowding, some of the issues we talk about, sanitation, and all of these things, that's the overcrowdedness in Monrovia. We are now going to depopulate Monrovia if every major economic activity, if every governance activity is going to be based in Monrovia. What people will go to Sino? What people will go to Maryland? What people will go to Nima? So we have to look at the issue of decentralization in a real careful way. You talk about the set aside. Yes, almost every country set aside certain things for their citizens. That brings me to the Liberalization Act. That act that was passed, I think probably I was there 15, 20 years old when that act was passed. What is wrong with the Liberalization Act? Why have we not been able to implement it? That act that set aside certain businesses for Liberians. What have we not done that? So these are some of the issues that we really need to discuss tonight. And if you ask me, really, to be honest with you, the reason why we continue to have the problems from time to time, from administration to administration, is this, what I call this weakness of character, where individuals don't have any integrity. There's no integrity. There is nothing. They don't have any character to protect. They got no sense of integrity. So everything goes. Everything goes. They are compromised in every form. The other day, the Senator Youngly Kanga of the Liberian Senate, she declared that the Senate is compromised. You have people in the judiciary, people that are really protected to keep their job. Even when the society is disintegrating, you expect the judiciary to uphold the rule of law. Some of them have lifetime appointment. They got these long tenure. The question is, why are they not stepping up to the plate? Why are senators and representatives that are elected for 9 years, 6 years, what robs them of their independence? Why are they not taking decisions in the interest of the country? So these are issues that we all need to review. And if we can find answer to these things, then we'll be finding solutions to some of the problems that we highlighted here.
Thank you. And that brings me to Carl or Mr. Cooney stressed a very important point here, that integrity issues, accountability. People are elected or appointed and they don't have integrity. He gave an example of people in the judicial system, people in the Senate. So this whole idea of decentralization, or as Ambassador Ban said, the appointment of superintendent. If you appoint, the election. So we elect senator and representative. Some of them are corrupt and compromised. So what's the difference with this superintendent? So, and okay. I heard you saying decentralization already exists, Carl.
You know that's what I say. I always say decentralization. The country's already, first of all, we have to go back to understand the context in which our constitution and our country was structured and why it's structured the way it is. Liberia is already decentralized. Decentralizing services is much different from decentralizing the governmental structure. The governmental structure is very decentralized. Liberia is not a federation. Liberia is a republic. So we're structured because, we got our independence before the United States had their Civil War. So our constitution is actually structured off of an individual state constitution and not, the current federal constitution that the United States government has. And I think that's better, because if we're complaining on one hand that the country's divided and the people don't feel like they're one, then we're on the other hand saying, but we should decentralize authority and give everybody their own elected county heads. I think that is a flawed process. I agree with most of what Mr. Barnes said, but I am in strong disagreement with the idea that the government structure is not decentralized. or that electing superintendents, and I disagree with my mother and many other people on this, so Mr. Barnes, don't feel bad, but the government structure, electing people to represent you, that is the decentralization. Having representatives go to, Monrovia and represent your interests. They have to confirm the superintendent that's appointed, and historically in Liberia, especially since the war, with the exception of some superintendents under Weah's administration, he's done a really poor job of appointing quality superintendents. But prior to Weah's administration, some of the most educated and capable government officials were appointed superintendents. I mean, you've got, some of the most educated women and men and most competent were in those roles. Decentralization of resources and services, that comes from two branches combining their efforts. The main driving force of that is the legislature. So it is the legislature that is already decentralized because these people are elected by local voters to represent their interests. The dysfunction lies there. Just because they're and then saying, oh, the people know best what is good for them. Clearly they don't. Clearly they do not. This is why we have Side Joseph and people like this in the Senate, because they don't understand that the people who are representing them need to be educated and they need to be capable of doing what they need to advance their cause. So if you have people going into the Senate and the House who think that getting there, all they're supposed to do is overpay themselves and then go back to the counties and, throw some little trinkets on people and keep themselves in power, that's what the problem is. The problem really doesn't lie in decentralization of the government. It lies in decentralization of services and also raising the consciousness and awareness of the voters so that they understand the functions of the people that they're sending to do their bidding. Right now, if we were to tell people to elect mayors and superintendents, we would not get better quality people than what we have in the House and the Senate. It would be a disaster. Because somebody said, oh, they need to elect mayors in Monrovia. I don't think if Jefferson Koji ran for mayor, he wouldn't win. I think he would win because that's where the people's minds are at. And so you can't be pushing this decentralization and then, at the same time saying, yeah, the people know better. Clearly, we don't. Secondly, to get to your point about corruption and incompetence. So most of the problem, comes from, again, it's education and acculturation. Things have become normalized in the Liberian society. People have normalized adultery. People have normalized rape. People have normalized spousal abuse. People have normalized stealing. People have normalized misappropriating funds and resources. People have normalized, pretending to be educated. People have normalized, calling themselves doctor when it's honorary. People have normalized, the society has normalized all kinds of things. You've got no integrity in any segment of the population. It's because of this normalization. It's people have chosen to accept the most vile things in our society. And we walk around as if these things are normal. And people who accept adulterers and rapists and, thieves in their homes are going to elect and empower them in the highest offices as well. If a woman is voting for a president and she accepts her husband molesting children in her household, what kind of mentality does this woman have to select a leader? If a man is a child molester or a rapist or an abuser, what kind of mentality does this man have to empower his leaders? So the reflection of dysfunction as below, so above. These people that they're empowering are coming from the general population. So we have to elevate the mentality of the masses. We have to educate everyone in the society so that we start to think differently. And this is not about religion, because there's churches and mosques all over Liberia. But these things are still going on. This is about ethics and what we will tolerate as a society. So No, the government is already decentralized. People are already choosing their leaders. The problem is they're choosing bad leaders. And that's why services are not being decentralized. That's why resources are not being decentralized, because they don't know what they're supposed to do. They don't know their function. They believe that things are supposed to be the way they are. And there's, as Mr. Barnes rightly said, lack of innovation. So again, I'm not going to sound, keep repeating myself here, but I appreciate, all of the comments, but I do want to emphasize that the structure of the government, especially if we want to unite the country, and we don't want to create a federation within Liberia where everyone says, oh, this county is independent. We don't want that. We want to unite the country. What we want to do is keep it the way it is, get better representatives, better senators, decentralized services, decentralized resources, so that everyone in the country has access, no matter where they are, to a good education, to good health care. I mean, as it stands, nobody has access to any of those things, even in the capital. But we have to elevate and raise the standards of the entire country.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. Let me go to Mr. Sharif. Mr. Sharif, from what Ambassador Barnes stated and what we hear most of the time, like the issue of reconciliation, right? Governance, corruption, innovation. To me, some of these things appear like the symptoms of the problem. What are the underlying problems? And the reason I say that is, for instance, governance. So if we have a government, the government is drawn out of the people. So it's a replica of the people. So you can have the government different from the people that elected them,
Right.
just as Carl said.
Right.
So what really is the underlying issue? Because this will be symptoms, corruption, for instance, right?
Right.
And the issue of the sanitation in Monrovia,
Right.
especially, there should be something underlying causing these things. What is it?
Dennis, thanks for the excellent question. First, I want to thank Ambassador Barnes for his service to our country. I want to thank you for being here, Ambassador. Masa, I want to say real quick that I'm not yet a doctor. I'm not yet a PhD. It is an aspiration.
It's honorary, Mr. Sharif.
Honorary doctor, like George Ware.
We can't have a show without talking about Prezo.
But so it's an excellent question. So the people elect these representatives. The representatives are not doing their job. You look at what's going on now. So the real issue for me, and I wanted, at the tail end of what Court was saying, I think I want to follow that thought. The real issue is the people that are elected don't know what they are doing. So you have a group of individuals who are incompetent. You have a group of individuals who are greedy. You have a group of individuals who are unpatriotic. Show me one member of Congress, of the Liberian Congress, that has a hut in their constituency that visit their districts. There are not many of them that visit their district areas. So I've mentioned on this show several times before, so it seems like I'm repeating myself here, but these guys, when they vacation in the United States of America, they vacation in Canada, they vacation in Europe. That costs a lot of resources needed to alleviate poverty, resources needed to build hospitals and schools and roads, clinics, and resources needed to pick up trash and the garbage and build a very viable sanitation system, not just in the city of Monrovia, but throughout the length and breadth of the Liberian nation state. This is a very small country. This is a very old country as well. And so it's inexcusable that this country that is very, very old, that the it seems like there is no leadership. So Dennis, to your question, this is the lack of leadership, and
Yep.
it is built on greed, sheer greed. So you have individuals whose goal is that the first thing they want to do is to get the big flashy Mercedes Benz to ride around the city of Monrovia, to visit, other significant others in Zwedru, or Kepamas, and so on and so forth. So we don't need that. We need leadership from the very top of the leadership ladder, from the president down to the janitor in these offices. We need leadership. We need people to be reported. As simple as, how about going to work on time? How about reporting to work on time? Okay, how about we start from there? The president, we are told sometimes that the president is not even, operating in his own office. Now, the president is the leader of the Republic of Liberia. The president should set example. So the president should report to office on time. He should be the first in and last out. And that's how the ministers will follow suit. The deputy ministers will follow suit. The assistant ministers will follow. The janitors, everybody will follow those examples. And because that is not happening, you have a society, right, that don't care. So we always talk about a mediocre culture. One of the things that I see, Dennis, you asked the question, what is Liberia's problem? I mean, we can talk for hours. There are many, many, many problems. What I see here, Dennis, is that the public sector is bloated. It's the bureaucracy is extremely large. Ambassador Barnes mentioned that, and I completely agree. I completely agree with him. Look at the public sector. This is the largest at any time in Liberian history. It's very large. It's very incompetent. They're wasting a lot of resources. Again, these are resources that are needed, critical resources needed for our infrastructure development, resources needed for education, resources needed to build Liberia. How about we stop borrowing from the United States of America? How about we stop borrowing from China? We don't need to borrow money.
Yeah.
There's no need to borrow.
Comrade Sherry, before you conclude there, because you mentioned lack of leadership, and I hear that a whole lot,
Yes.
right? So where does this lack of leadership come from? Because as I said, those leaders were either elected, most of them, and they are coming out of the people. So where do we train these leaders? Okay, how do we get leaders that will do what we are talking about here to move the country forward? So the lack of leadership is a result of something else.
If you would permit me, I'd like to, perhaps, I may get some disagreement on this, but I'd like to go back, in historical times. Back in 1878, President James Spriggs Payne was impeached by the Liberian legislature. And then I believe in 1920. Some say he resigned, but I think President C.D.B. King, it looks like he was impeached. I'm not sure, but so you look at what was going on at the time. So at least there was what you can glean as an active legislature, right? As people of conscience who were doing their job. I'm not saying that this was perfect. This was by no means perfect, because people were excluded and all of these different things. But I'm just saying, how about you appearing to do your job? So as we move to the 1940s, in the mid 1940s, so all of this, the rise of the Tubman era, the Tubman autocracy, right? So it created a lot of problems that led to some of the things that you see now. So you have the all-powerful presidency. Tubman became very powerful. First of all, presidents were elected every 2 years. So it was every 2 years. It was not this 6-year system. This is new. This is all contemporary. So it was every 2 years till Barclay, Edwin Barclay. Barclay changed it from 2 to 4, 4 to 8, and then by the time you get to and then he changed it back to 4. By the time you get to Tubman moved back to 8, and then it was perpetual from then on after he had clamped down on all the opposition. So you could see the formation of an autocracy from the Tubman era that went all the way to Tolbert. So Tolbert tried to make some reform. And so someone mentioned every time we get an opportunity, we step on our own goods. So he tried to make some reform. So when he tried to make the reform, people said the reform was not good enough. And what did the Liberian people do? He was murdered, right? So he became the sacrificial lamb. So he was murdered, even though he was making some changes, right? So every time we have an opportunity, it's like we take one step forward and we take 10 steps backwards. So ever since that time, Liberia has never been the same. And we can argue this for forever and ever. Liberia has never been the same ever since 1980 and leading up to the Civil War and to the Civil War. So when the opportunity was there to ask Mr. Doe to step down or to take Mr. Doe down, what did Charles Taylor do? Charles Taylor, to me, infringed on the legitimate rights of the legitimate grievances of the Liberian people to create mass murder. He didn't need to do that. So there was already an issue in Liberia at that time, and everyone believed that Samuel Doe was an issue. And that Taylor came in the manner that he came and turned the legitimate grievances of the Liberian people into mass murder. There again, when the opportunity presented itself for us to right the wrongs, we always go the wrong way. And this, I think, is a problem.
Thank you. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, if you're just joining us, this is Focus on Liberia Tough Talking Thursday. Ways to move Liberia forward is what we are discussing tonight. I know, Ambassador Bang, you have a lot to respond to from what everybody has said, but let me throw this one in, because I believe our problem is education. We are not training people to solve the problem. We don't have an educational system that's going to solve the problem that we are facing. I'll give you an example. When I was in high school in Monrovia, Freeport was always overflowed during the rainy season. We have not been able to train people to fix that. We have had the issue of malaria from the time my father was a teenager. Still, we don't train people to fix that issue. We have just had a 14-year civil war, and there is nothing in our curriculum to talk about how to hit war and avoid that. So our educational system is not training us to solve problems. We have the issue of corruption. We have that you spoke about eloquently. Mr. Sherry talked about the lack of leadership, or Mr. Cooney talked about the lack of integrity. We don't train people to do those things. Even in our kindergarten, we don't even train our students to wait in line for their turn. So because we are not training people to solve the problems that we are facing, these problems continue to happen over and over. So I will respectfully say that what you have listed, most of them are symptoms of the real issue. What's your take?
Well, I got to tell you, this is absolutely intriguing. I have been making notes here and listening very, very carefully. And I want to stress 3 or 4 major issues. With reference to Cole's point about the issue of decentralization, I just want to emphasize that this is supposed to be a democracy. And a good friend of mine a long time ago said, democracy is messy. We understand that. But the whole idea of democracy is supposed to be a process or a system of the people, by the people, and for the people. So we need to empower the people by having their direct participation in the process of determining their destiny. I understand what you were saying about the issue of services versus administrative issues. I understand and accept that. But the problem is people have been isolated, okay, from actual participation in the destiny of themselves and their country and the government. So that is what I was referring to when I mentioned the issue of decentralization.
Example, Mr. Barnes, example of how people are being isolated.
Well, the mere fact, for example, that you're going to build a school Okay, the government is going to fund a school in some county. How is that decision made as to where the school should be located?
Okay.
It's made in Monrovia. Okay, as opposed to engaging the communities and the people that are going to be sending their kids to those schools as to where the schools should be, so that it will exploit the best resources and serve a larger portion of the population. That determination is made in Monrovia, many times with the influence of the member of the legislature who wants it in a particular district because he wants to make his people happy and wants to be re-elected. So we need to have direct participation of the people in such issues, and that's what I'm referring to. Okay, the other issue, the other issue is, also mentioned, all of you have said something, and I've said this, and I'm very reluctant to accept it. People have basically come to the conclusion that people get the leaders they deserve. Okay, and while there may be some truism in that, I beg to say that needs to be changed. Okay, we have a lot of issues in Liberia, but in terms of having skill sets and people and experience and expertise to address the problems of Liberia, we do have that. The fundamental problem is we have, like Cole said, we have institutionalized a lot of very bad habits. Okay, I'm running for the presidency of Liberia as an independent because I see political institutions as a hurdle to development in Liberia. The politicians begin to serve the interest and agenda of the political institution and themselves, as opposed to what they're supposed to be doing, the basic needs of the people. Okay. The other thing is, for example, when a person runs for president and they win, the issue of governance is put at task because they will put people, partisans, in key positions of governance, and they have absolutely no idea what they're doing. You got ministers in Liberia at the head of organizations. They don't know as much about the organization that they're supposed to be running as a rooster knew about neurosurgery. Okay, so that we need to address that. Okay, so how do we do it? It comes down to leadership. We need to take the Liberian experience, the paradigm, and literally turn it on its ears. We say in Liberia, chakla the whole thing, okay, and fix it. For example, the issue of institutions in Liberia, okay. Mr. Sharif mentioned matter of institutions. Institutions do not function because they are revolving doors. Okay, you get one administration, they have the ministerial staff and all of that. A new administration come in, from the minister to the janitor, they will all leave, and a whole new crew comes in. Okay, as a result of that, you do not have continuity, you lose institutional memory, you lose consistency. Okay, so that needs to be changed. That's why I said that we need to say from assistant minister down, all professionals, regardless of who's in power, that person sits in that position because they are delivering. They are technocrat, regardless of their ethnicity, even their political affiliation. Okay, we need to pull that stuff up. We need to clean this out. We are at the edge of the abyss in Liberia. If we are not careful, and I really believe we are very close to falling over into that abyss and becoming like a governless, stateless country. Okay, so we need to do some pretty radical things. How do we do that? I always come back to something very fundamental. 3 cardinal questions we must ask ourselves as a people. 3 cardinal questions. Question number 1, what do we want? If we didn't know what we want, we will not get it. What do we want? Question number 2, what must we do to get what we want? And question number 3, are we willing and prepared to do what we must do to get what we want? Now, don't get me wrong. It's not going to be easy to do because we're dealing with people that are we are all averse to change. We don't want to change. We get in a comfort zone and don't want to change. Is it going to be easy? No. But it's going to take courageous leadership to do that. 3 cardinal questions need to govern us, need to lead us, need to be the thing that we focus on as a people. What do we want? What must we do to get what we want? Are we willing and prepared to do what we must do to get what we want?
Thank you. Call Ambassador Barnes mentioned you few number of times. So respond before I go to Massa.
So again, I think, not to beat a dead horse, but I would argue that, from a policy perspective, I mean, many positions in a democracy are appointed. In fact, Liberia has a direct democracy, even more so than the United States does. There's very few countries in the world that have the level of participation in one vote, one person equals one vote chooses a president. It's very rare in the democratic world. So the United States has an electoral college, other places have their prime minister selected by other, elected officials. So the head of state in Liberia is directly chosen by the people. That's important to note. The second thing is taxation can be an issue. In Georgia here, where I live, again, structured similar to what Liberia is structured because it's structured like a state. In Georgia, the decision about where resources go, where money goes, is made by the representatives, the elected representatives. It's made by the state Congress. It's not really determined by, county commissioners as much. So the bulk of the taxes that we pay in the state of Georgia go to the state. And it's the state that determines where they're going to allocate resources. And who's making that determination where resources are allocated? It is the representatives of the people elect. So I'm going to say this again. We already elect people to determine where our resources go. They're just not doing their jobs. Electing more people and creating more burden, isn't going to fix this. It just isn't. We need to figure out how to get the legislature to do its job and stop overpaying itself and usurping the functions of the executives by building private schools and private bridges and doing everything that they should be forcing the executive to do in their district with the tax resources, the concession taxes, the income taxes, whatever taxes are collected. It is the job of the representatives to determine how the budgetary funds are allocated. They're there to fight for the people who elected them, to get their share of the resources. So we should be fighting for the decentralization of our resources. And one last thing is, people like to argue that, decentralization means, we've got to restructure the Constitution. If the government, if the people have demonstrated such incompetence that our Supreme Court has been slapped on the wrist by ECOWAS, by the international community, who's going to restructure our Constitution for the better? Every amendment they put forth within the last 10 years to amend the Constitution has been horrific. I mean, look at the dual citizenship referendum, how ridiculous that was. They're trying to create a second class of citizenship. It is a reflection of the human capital, the capacity of the people to do what we're expecting them to do. These lawmakers went along with it. These are the same lawmakers that went along with Bali Island, selling it to Indians when the Constitution says they can't own land in our country. So we're talking about doing things with people that aren't capable of doing the things we're asking them to do.
Also, let me ask you. You're saying people are incompetent. They are.
That's not talking Thursday. I don't come look for me.
So how do we fix it? Because if these people are supposed to make laws, if these people are supposed to enforce the law, and they're all corrupt and incompetent, where do we start? What's the fix?
Everyone's not corrupt and incompetent. I mean, I'm really talking tough and I'm generalizing.
Yeah,
I don't sincerely believe that everybody. If I believe that everybody in Liberia was incompetent and corrupt, I would change my nationality. I would adopt Guinea, one of my ancestral homelands. I'm not forced to be Liberian. I love the country. I love my people. But the problem is we have to do some soul searching. We have to fight to advance our own selves and our own thinking and make our own lives, our own homes, our children better people, ourselves better people. This is not something that's going to be mandated by somebody sitting in the mansion. It's going to be something that we as citizens have to make a conscious effort to be better citizens. Better citizens produce better countries.
It seems like you're saying what I've said already. It seems like you're saying exactly what I said.
No, I'm saying what you're saying. And as I said earlier, Mr. Barnes, I agree with everything you said, except that the government isn't already decentralized. That's where we disagree. Okay. And that's on a public policy and me looking at the structure of our government. It's extremely decentralized. That's the only point of contention that we have.
Because what I see here is which one happened first, the chicken or the egg. But I want us to be specific to some issues here
Mm-hmm.
so that we can have our time to. Because when we're saying generally, how can we move? How can we fix these things? Let's pick up one issue and let me go to Massa. The issue of rape, the rape crisis or the rape epidemic in our country is shockingly high. Some might even say that it's out of control. So how should the country address this? Maybe if we pick one issue and see how we can fix it, it'll give us better idea how we can fix the whole country. Let's talk about rape. You are muted, Massa.
Yeah, I know you're trying to silence me. I'm just joking. So, but okay, can you hear me now, Dennis?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. So first, let me just say that listening to the other discussions and being part of this discussion, and I'm sure at other times where all of us are part of these kinds of discussions, it actually reminds me, again, Dennis, you said education, 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 but it also reminds me of the book Utopia. I think everybody on this forum, I think, has read Utopia, or at least to a large extent, excerpts of. It reminds me of an excess of the book Utopia by Sir Thomas More that I would just, one of my favorite portions, what I will paraphrase. And it says that when society, by virtue of poor policies, creates poverty, and then when people can't feed their families, when they resort to stealing, then we call them rogues, and then we want to punish them. When society fails to provide education for its people, and we all know how very important and crucial education is, and when its people are uneducated and unable to do all these things that we expect them to do to make a decent and sound decision, we become upset, we call them ignorant, and we think they've sold out. So the point I'm trying to make is, as far as I'm concerned, societies evolved. Liberia stopped evolving since 42 years ago. And people grow, society grows, civilization grows. The United States of America was not like this. We know, and they're still growing, they're still evolving. Look at the crisis with Russia and the Ukraine now. It's all about growth, it's all about expansion and whatsoever. Liberia stopped growing since 42 years ago. And
I disagree, Masava. Go ahead.
Yeah, okay. Liberia stopped growing 42 years ago, and basically we're stuck in neutral. But let me just go to the issues, to the topic, Dennis, of rape. Again, I will say, sometimes when we have these kinds of crises that we have on our hands as a people, we want to look at how have we enabled, as a people, as a society, how have we enabled this monster that is named rape now, that is staring us in the face because of impunity. Liberians, we've never learned to respect the issue of accountability. We don't want to deal with because it's a tough thing. It's hard to dismiss your best friend who you brought on the job, who you shouldn't have hired in the first place. It's hard to dismiss that person when they do wrong. People misbehave. We don't want to take any action because they, we close to them, or we know their families or whatsoever. And we may think it's a small thing, but it's not. What happened in the war was extremely epic. The kinds of gross human rights violations that took place in the war, especially what happened to women in the war, that has not been addressed. We have not really addressed the gross human rights violations of the war, especially rape and sexual abuse that have happened to women. We have not addressed it at all because it's a sticky subject. Okay, who are the rapists we're talking about? Our brothers, our co-workers, our professional colleagues, our peers, government officials, people we voted into office. Okay, a lot of the people who did horrible things during the war and whose society is saying by virtue of looking the other way, oh, you know what? It's a small country. We are all interrelated. The Vice President Joel Howard Taylor made that comment, last year, and I just shook my head. Oh, we don't want war crimes court because it would divide Liberians further. We are a small country and we are all interrelated. If we take anybody to court, we're going to be hurting so many families. Are you really serious? What's about the more than 250,000 people who lost their lives? What's about all those women who have been raped? So the point I'm trying to make, Dennis, is that until we decide as a society to deal with this monster called impunity, all these things will continue to happen. Liberia has made some progress in terms of gender equity, addressing sexual gender-based violence against women. We didn't have the Minister of Gender before. Now we have the Minister of Gender that is supposed to deal specifically with those issues. We have the rape court. We have a female judge. We have laws that are supposed to protect women and address these issues. But the thing is, they're not being enforced.
Thank you.
So it all has to do, bottom line, is impunity. People don't enforce the law. People are compromised. It's okay. Even amongst ourselves. Like, for example, if a relative rapes the daughter of his brother, a representative was 2 years ago. He rapes his brother's daughter, who he's been raising. He rapes her, she gets pregnant for him, and the story comes out, and people are trying to deal with it. What do the family do? They steal the little girl, and they say at one point, they send her to the sandy bush because they think that nobody can go there. With me, I give a speech and say, y'all go and storm the sandy bush and bring the girl out. Because, all of us are subjected to the laws of Liberia. So the sandy society is no exception. Next thing you know, we heard that they had transferred the girl across the border to Guinea. So this issue of not wanting to deal with these kinds of things because they're sensitive in nature, or we're going to destroy people's families or whatsoever, it's the lack of accountability and impunity, Dennis. This is what's causing all this problem. And then also culturally, our culture, yes, people think that, they're entitled to sleep with women. So if you say no, there's no such thing as no in the Liberian culture sexually. If you say no, that's the more time they want to do it. In fact, I think they're more encouraged when you say no. So it's the issue of impunity.
May I interject something here, Dennis?
Yeah, before I go to Kuni, go ahead.
While Masa is absolutely right about impunity, that impunity is fueled by the absence of political will to do the right thing. Okay? We need to have leadership. It comes down to leadership.
Ambassador, about what is that political will? Why? Why is there no political will? I want us to answer
Masa expressed some of those things. Because people saying it's a small family, if you make some decision, it will impact family. If I went to Liberia and stole government money, they will go and start begging. My family will come and beg. Sooner or later, people that don't even know will be begging for me. Oh, he didn't mean it. He's sorry. That's nonsense. We need to be strong enough and courageous enough. We need leadership that's courageous enough to make some tough decisions, okay, and stand by it tenaciously until we see it to its conclusion. Look, no matter who it is, it can be a member of the Dawn legislature. If he rapes somebody and in a court of jurisprudence, a legal court, and he's found guilty, I would not put him in jail. I will put him under the damn jail, regardless of who or what he is. Okay? We just need to have focus on the three cardinal questions. Are we prepared? Are we willing to do this?
Thank you. Mr. Kuni, they say Liberians, we are good at identifying the problems. We talk so much. How do we fix it? How do we move forward? The main question tonight.
Well, Before I answer that question, I just wanted to go back to this issue of decentralization. Uh, I don't think the issue is an either or a proposition. I think it is a topic that needs to be discussed and need to be reviewed. Uh, Everyone understand that Liberia is a unitary state and no one is calling for many independent states in our country. But we're just talking about a basic, a situation where basic services at the local level are provided by local people. We have in our country, even to build a market, like the ambassador said, build a market. That decision comes from Monrovia. Market, come on, market. It's not made by the people that are in that local jurisdiction. So, and even with the situation, I agree that people in Liberia do elect their representatives and their senators. But look at who are the people elected to those positions? Those are people that live in Monrovia. Almost all of the legislative caucuses are people who live in Monrovia. They do not live in those counties. They are from those counties, but they never lived there. My entire legislative caucus from Monrovia, all of them live in Monrovia.
But they are still elected by people in the county.
I agree. They are elected by people in the county. But
So
what
why,
I'm saying, the fact that they don't even live in those counties, it creates that disconnect. So what we're saying, to have a system of local self-government where basic services, sanitation, schools, and little things can be implemented by the local authority, I don't think it's calling for a federal government in our country. But with regard to the issue, the other issue
before you leave that, if the same people that are electing, let's use Sino County, for instance, if the same local people are electing people in Monrovia, what difference does that make if they are electing people in Sino County? They will still make poor decisions, correct?
Yeah, but the level of accountability will be very close to them. The level of accountability will be close to them. They elect the people,
what does that mean?
Because that's the essence. That's the essence of the self-government. The accountability is close to you, as opposed to the accountability being very far from you. You elect the senator.
What I'm saying is, if you elect a thief in Monrovia and a thief in Greenville, what difference does that make?
The difference is the closeness of the accountability.
Even though both of them are thieves.
Yeah, accountability make a difference if they can hold you accountable. So that's the difference.
Okay, go to your point.
So the point is, look, the issue of rape, as we've discussed here on this platform, is a very, very serious crime. It's something that has been around for a long time. And I agree with some of the points that many people make here. But what I say from my perspective, we're not going to have an ideal society, really, where there will be no crime, where there will be full employment. And even in those societies, there are crimes. So for me, putting on my law enforcement cap, yes, I agree with the question of impunity, but I think law enforcement need to double their effort. Law enforcement need to double their effort. We need to double our effort in investigation, in apprehending people that are committing these acts, and do real investigation that will not only arrest, but that will take people to court, and try to convict people. I remember with the prevalence of rape in our country today, I'm wondering, I'm not in law enforcement now, but when we were there used to be this multidisciplinary unit that used to be formed that would be able to go out to do these things, to conduct, pull resources from different agencies of law enforcement to confront this issue. In addition to that, you had the community policing component of it, where the police is present in the community to be able to not only prevent crime, but be able to apprehend criminals and be able to do a real police investigation that will lead to the arrest and the prosecution of crime. Because we're not going to have a perfect society. No matter what society we have, we're going to still have some level of crime. So putting on my law enforcement cap, I think our law enforcement agencies really, really need to step up to the plate. They really need to step up to the plate to investigate not only the crime of rape, but the crime of murders, all of these things that are going on. One of the things that instill fear in the citizens are crimes that go unsolved. Of course, the police department don't solve every crime, but there has to be some level, some percentage of solution to crimes that are reported. I remember when I was at the Zone 3 as chief of CID, we were required to make a monthly statistics of crimes that were reported and the percentage of cases that were solved. And we were held accountable on the basis of that report. So we can't have a situation where these crimes are committed, investigations are announced, and sometimes we don't even get result of these investigations. It terrifies, it not only terrifies the citizens, but it emboldens the criminals as well. Because this is going to happen, and they're just going to announce an investigation, and the criminal will go free. So for me, I think effective law enforcement, which also presupposes that law enforcement need to be funded. Law enforcement need to be funded. Look, sometimes the situation where you find people in administrative positions, they got these so many gallons of gasoline, and even the police that are supposed to do the patrol, they don't have gasoline. Up to this day, people going to the police department are still paying officers way to go on their complaints. I mean, these are things that affect the ordinary people. You carry a complaint to the police station, the policeman is asking you to pay their way so that they can go on your complaint. These are small things. So for me, sometimes I just like to keep it simple. If we can resolve these things, if citizens are being required to transport police to go on their cases, if we cannot successfully investigate crime and prosecute criminals, especially those who commit this horrendous crime of rape, if we can bring satisfactory resolution to issues of murder, we instill fear in the citizens, we embolden criminals. And I think this is where the leadership need to be, police executive leadership. I want to see the leadership of the police developing strategic plans for the police department instead of the director of police dividing marks in the street. That's a line officer activity. That's not a staff activity. That's not a staff activity. So these are the little things I think we need to do for us to solve some of these problems. Some of them are highly political, they require political solution, but some of it is where we are. The
Thank you,
job
sir.
is given to us to do. What are we doing?
Some time ago,
Hold on, Ambassador Vance. Let Cole wanted to ask a question first, and then you.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that, when I was at Transport, I worked really closely with the police department. And it struck me how much revenue Liberia National Police ignores, just completely ignores. And I used to have this conversation all the time. I'm like, oh, we don't have patrol cars. You have checkpoints. You have checkpoints all over the place. And you have vehicles coming to these checkpoints with all kinds of problems. You've got missing, license plates. You've got vehicles that aren't registered, drunkenness. A lot of these distance drivers, there's a culture among the drivers to drink cane juice before they go on long distance drive. Can you imagine? And because they think that it will help their body to be, if you don't drink, your body will be sore, and I used to be like, are you out of your mind? And then, so most of these long distance drivers in Liberia are drunk, and they openly say they have cane juice being sold at the parking stations and at the checkpoints where you've got police. And I used to say, find these people, ticket them. You guys have a book of tickets. Raise the revenue you need to raise your ability to do your job. Start from the checkpoints. Start ticketing people. Start parking. The checkpoint in Banga has this huge property behind it. When you start impounding these cars, these people are going to come up with the money to release those cars and to register those cars and to do what they need to do. Liberia National Police needs to work out something with the Ministry of Finance to say, hey, we're going to drive up revenue 300%. But you have to give 50% of the revenue we bring back to LNP to fund training, to fund resources. Trust me, everybody will put their tail in there, what, if that kind of leadership happened. It's not really that complicated, but it's the political will. Nobody wants to do it. But there's one of the greatest missed opportunities to generate revenue is LMP. LMP should never be complaining. They have the manpower. They have the checkpoints. They don't even need cars. Everybody has to pass through the checkpoints in Liberia. Once they generate that revenue, then they can get patrol cars and train, people to patrol the highways. But at this point, start with what you have. Start with what you have, and we have a lot, but we're not using it. We're not utilizing it. And that's all I wanted to say, Mr. Cooney. I mean, it's like sitting on top
That's
of
a good point. That's
Thank
a
you.
good point, and that's part of the strategic thinking I'm talking about. Somebody got to sit down and make that strategic plan.
We did it, man. I wrote this stuff down. I had a whole proposal. They ignored it. They didn't want to do it. That political will. I'm not just pulling this from the top of my head. That's something we worked on. And this is what I was trying to drive, and nobody wanted to listen to our police.
and that's the question, that's why I keep asking why. But let me, Ambassador Ban, go and ask your question because
I was responding.
Then we go to Sharif.
I was responding to Masa's comment on it and Cooney's comment on the rate thing. Unfortunately, a lot of the crime in Liberia has become politicized. Several months ago, I wrote an op-ed called "Enough is Enough," and it was in response to the impunity that went along with all these killings in Liberia. Yeah. Several people were, some high profile, some not so high profile, were killed. And I wrote and more or less expressed very candidly what I thought the situation was. My life was threatened because I stood up and expressed myself. The thing people don't understand, I'm not scared of them. And I say that to say, all Liberians need to understand that we have power. You have power. You need to take some time and say, I'm going to stand up and lead and speak out against some of these things. It's important. With reference to your point on the police, a checkpoint, and a wonderful idea, except that they will steal the hell out of it. I'm sorry, but you need to put in place the institutional structure.
That's what the revenue authority is for.
Yeah, okay. I'll rest my case.
Master,
the Liberia Revenue Authority.
You had a quick question.
Sorry, can I just come in really quick? So when we talk about structure, institutional structure, the Liberia Revenue Authority is very effective. I agree that people will steal and they'll do whatever, but you don't pay government revenue directly to the police. If someone is ticketed, they have to go and pay. They get a thing they pay directly into revenue. That was put in place, and that's what's supposed to happen.
Well, you preach to the choir. I used to be Minister of Finance. So you preach to the choir. I understand. I'm just making an observation.
Okay.
Sorry.
Thank you. Masa, your question quickly before we go to Mr. Sherry. And Ambassador Ban, I got a video here I want to play for you because Masa mentioned it. Go ahead. Oh, Masa, you will say I'm trying to challenge you again.
I know. Quickly call, excellent points, but I just hope some of the nomenclature will change around, because someone like me who experienced the war, when I hear the word checkpoint, psychologically I become terrified again, and traumatized. So we hope, as you guys try to refine, the policy document and all of that, some of the words will be changed around. Checkpoint is like,
that's what they are. They're checkpoints.
Yes, okay. But anyway, yeah. Anyway, Cooney, I wanted to ask Cooney, you being an experienced and knowledgeable law enforcement person, the national budget, the recently passed national budget appropriated, I think, more than $102 million, almost $103 million, I think, for the security sector, law enforcement, all of that. Now we know the security sector is broad. It cuts across a wide range of agencies and and government apparatus. Now, do you think, I'm asking this question because you spoke about resources, and we know that resources is extremely crucial for anything, but most especially for law enforcement, especially for a country that's coming out of war. Now, do you think, Mr. Cooney, you are in government currently, right?
No, I'm not.
No? Okay. I don't know what people think so, but anyway.
Why everybody want to put me in this government?
We have a lot of questions here. Let me go to Mr. Sherry quickly.
Masa, he's soon to be. He's joining little by little.
But do you think, though? Do you think, Cooney? Do you think that 102? Let's wrap it up. Maybe $103 million is good for the entire country, for the security sector, under which, you know, you will have the police and all of that. I'm kind of thinking.
Well, I can't really answer that question because I don't know the current security threats. I don't know what the security sector is facing right now. But what I know traditionally, budget for law enforcement or for any government entity is never enough. No matter where they put it, they want more. Yeah.
Thank you.
So yeah, I can't
Let me
really
go to
say what
Mr.
I know.
Sharif on how we can fix it. Our time is fast spent. Mr. Sharif, with all we've said tonight, how can we move forward, as a country?
Well, we can move forward. We've said a lot. We can move forward. The ambassador and Cole and almost everyone else mentioned the political will. So
Stop electing people without political will. Go ahead.
Yeah, the will is not there. Dennis, I have said on this show one time that I have lost all, I have lost confidence in this, and it's not just this government. So let's get this clear. It didn't just start with George Weah. So this goes back, right? It goes back. Massa said Liberia stopped growing 42 years ago. She's up to something because there was a time in Liberia when it looked like the sun, was shining on the nation, on the Liberian nation state. And what do? We unleash violence. Liberians unleash violence on the country. So whatever enterprise was started in 1980 has never left us. So I think that is the point that she's making. That enterprise, whatever was started in 1980 or before 1980. So you have individuals who believe that it was justified, that whatever went on in 1980 was justified.
Yep.
I beg to differ because it has never left us. That moment has never left us. And so we are here today talking about the issues that should have been addressed all these years. I remember a time that there was these multilateral high schools. There was one in Zwedru, one in Vonjama, I think one in Harbel. And these multilateral schools, like the one in Zwedru, so Zwedru became a student center, a student town where, students from the different areas, like the different parts of the Southeast converged on Zwedru. And this high school, this was just a high school. But when you look at this high school and the high school curriculum or whatever was going on there, you can actually compare it to some of the community colleges and some of the colleges, and I would tell you some of the universities that they have now in Monrovia, right? So a lot was going on, but that has stopped. Now, when you come to, whatever George Weah is doing or not doing, we have to hold him and those elected with him accountable. Again, I'll return to that. Why are they not doing their job? Every society, every progressive society builds on whatever was done by their predecessors. The United States of America was not always this way. The city of Philadelphia was not always this way. In 1918, there was a flu pandemic that killed nearly 20,000 people in the state of Pennsylvania, in the city of Philadelphia. But as a result of that, there were policies, there were institutions that grew out of that tragedy. There are institutions, there are policies that have grown out of this current public health emergency that we're in. So when we came out of our tragedy in Liberia, what institutions, what policies have we made so that the lives of the Liberian people will be alleviated, so that we'll alleviate poverty, so that schools will be built, so that you'll have vocational institutions for young people? We've talked about this. There is no vision by those elected to do any of those things. So we've graduated from the Civil War. Then what? What else are we going to do? So it cannot be business as usual. But right now, it's business as usual. And the other thing that's going on that a lot of us must not ignore is the attack on education, the attack on intellectuals. So, there is a consistent effort to attack knowledge and promote ignorance. And anytime you see that, I fear for Liberia. I fear we're on the precipice of becoming irrelevant because educated people are called elitists. Educated people are called the intelligentsia, the so-called intelligentsia. Educated people are being condemned. And so instead of promoting education, instead of celebrating knowledge, what is going on now? Education has been degraded. So verbally, and you see it in their spoken words, and you see it in their actions. And so, Dennis, that is a scary thing in Liberia at this time. And perhaps we're not even talking about that. And those are some of the things I think we need to be talking about because that is very scary. There was a time that the president of the Republic of Liberia, my father told me that President Tolbert went to visit them, a group of Mandingo people, and told them that you Mandingo people need to send your sons and daughters to school. So the president made an effort. When he didn't see any fruitful outcome, when he visited again, he told them, you Mandingo people need to send your kids to school. And thereafter, there were a group of Mandingo people who were sent to school, Mandingo children who were sent to school during that period. So those are the things I'm talking about.
And that's how you got to Waplo Institute.
That's how I got to Waplo Institute.
Thank you.
You know what? And you know what else? There were teachers, and sorry for taking this long. There were teachers. So teachers used to, the paymaster used to go pay the teachers in these villages so that they will not leave their classrooms to go to Swedru to cash their check. They pay them in cash during those days. So after that, the paymaster system was stopped after the coup. And then what happened was the teachers started going to Swedru to cash their check. And now, the Lebanese, businessmen were taking half of their check. That's what they used to call LPA at this time. So we have retrogressed. Masa is absolutely right. We've retrogressed. I'm not going to say there have been no progress. There have been progress in some areas, but we've retrogressed a lot. And I don't know how we get to where we were because every society has to evolve, and we haven't.
Thank you. Mr. Barnes, you were in government, and let me announce that Mr. Barnes is running for president. So you have more questions here. You were in government, and I see that there are some questions here. Say, oh, what did you do? And you say you're going back.
Oh, I am so tired of that question. What did you do? How many people have been in government? Step forth and did.
Let me. This is where I'm going with it. I have a main issue here, and that's Masa raised the issue, and that's the War and Economic Crimes Code. Let's take a listen what the current vice president said when it comes to impunity.
Sorry. Our country has gone through a very difficult process. There is still much left to be done. Our country is still not reconciled. I do not think a war crimes code for Liberia will be the best thing. We are a very small country made up of less than maybe 4 million persons. And the interrelatedness of the families are so tight. If you drag one person to court, the families that are attached, it will just have a ripple effect.
It will just have a ripple effect.
That is nonsense. That is absolute nonsense. Okay? Because it will have a ripple effect, you allow people to do unjust things or do criminal things or illegal things and get away with it?
Exactly.
We have to be strong. We
Amen.
have to be courageous. I can assure you, Massa, and I am saying this for the record, I am a stringent and will be a stringent supporter of the implementation of the TRC recommendations in Liberia. Absolutely. Now, you said the thing about it, if people look at it from a very narrow perspective, the recommendations of the TRC is significant, is large. There are many, many aspects of it. Okay. But people are just looking at those areas where they are afraid that their families will be prosecuted. Well, if your family did something wrong, let them pay the consequences of the action. Let them go to a court of law and show that they're innocent. But what the vice president has said, in my mind, is absolutely atrocious. I do not agree with it. I'm sorry to be so emotional, but I feel very strongly about this matter.
Thank you. Let's take a short break. When we come back, we're going to read comments and I'll let you respond.
At Focus on Liberia, we discuss everything Liberia, from education to politics, arts and culture, entertainment, agriculture, history, religion, family, and technology. Focus on Liberia uncovers and showcases the best of Liberia and shows the world the truth about Liberia. We educate, elevate, and promote all things Liberia. We conduct interviews, panel discussions, debates, and more. Tune in to Focus on Liberia on Facebook and YouTube and be a part of the stories that make up the news.
Thank you. Welcome back to Focus on Liberia. This is Tough Talking Thursday. And by the way, we at Focus on Liberia, we condemn rape. We say real men don't rape women, girls, and babies. So stop this rape thing. This Saturday, we're going to have a celebration of the life of Dr. Amos Claudius Sawyer. And please tune in and say something about Professor Sawyer. It's happening this Saturday at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Then on Sunday, we're going to have what we call the Justice Forum. We're beginning a series on the judicial system. We want to talk about the Liberian legal system and its impact on the lives and the human rights of the Liberian people. So for March 6th, that is this Sunday, we're going to start with an introduction of the series. We'll have an overview of the Constitution and talk about fundamental rights. Then next week, Tuesday, Yakasa Wei, who's running for Representative District number 66A in Minnesota, will be my guest. You sure don't want to miss it. Again, welcome to Focus on Liberia, where we educate, we elevate, and promote all things Liberia. Let's go to our comments here. Kalabo Gonglo said, I have two questions for Mr. Barnes. Why do you run for president every election? Do you regret your role in Charles Taylor government?
I've run for president of Liberia only once in 2005. So I don't know where my dear colleague and friend gets his impression that I've run for every election. But I've only run once in 2005. And do I regret my role in President Taylor's government? Absolutely not. I enter government regardless of whose government it is to serve. Okay, and I've been fortunate enough to serve in several governments, as a matter of fact, and I've done my best. Let my record speak for itself.
Thank you. Otuka Sugar Vonse, the problem in Liberia is the high percentage of illiteracy within the population. The voters that vote for those uneducated and incompetent leaders and officials of government. I really don't think the voters are not educated. The people that are even canvassing for these people are educated equally. Amos Songo said Liberia's problems are mirrored, but amongst the most pertinent is lack of innovation, creativity, and foresight. For example, if a Liberian occupies a position, he or she does only the mundane and basic functions without thinking creatively. A minister of education doesn't know that he can solicit grants from foreign sources, or he sits and waits for government funding. Shame on us. I have some disagreement there. Theona, it hurts me so much living in America, seeing our people suffering in Liberia, while the representatives and senators discuss national matters with childish behavior undermining each other person. This one is a long one. He said, Ambassador Barnes, I did mention on the show last month concerning Liberia's electricity. When you were a guest, but the host didn't refer that for your information. But there's something maybe from the last show that our friend trying to go back to here. Those are a few of the questions. There are so many. Evans from Facebook, where is the new national movement to decentralize our country, like PA or Moja? Those groups has a presence in almost every county to educate those in the interior of our country. And, yeah, that's the thing. Mr. Kune, you were once progressive, maybe. So these people used to have their presence in every county. I think people still do.
He lost his progressive step.
No, I don't. Well, like I said, the progressive, sometimes when I speak, they say that nostalgia, but the progressive, they were very patient. They took their time to build consciousness. They took their time to educate people. They did so many things. They had the adult literacy program that was throughout the country. They worked with the student movement. They worked with workers' union throughout the country, building consciousness. So it took them a long time to even take the decision to form a political party, especially for Moja. From 1974, they did not make that decision until 1980. So that is totally different from the situation we have today.
Thank you.
Where almost every movement, by the time they announce themselves, there's already a presidential candidate.
Yeah. All right. Time is fast spent, but I don't want to keep you too long beyond 2 hours. So let's go to the part that called love the most. That's our Tabata. Tabata in Southeastern language means foolishness. There are a lot of foolish things going on in the country. So I will go around the room. Let know what's the Tabata of the week. Mr. Cooney, let's start with Mr. Sherry, let's start with you.
Oh man, you should have gone to him first. I don't have anything for Liberia today, but
we will come back when you want to think about it.
No. I'll just go with something local. So the other day I was watching television. I was watching. There's a program on ABC called The View, and one of the guests on The View was an African American man. And he said, one of the things he said, his name is, I don't know if any of you have heard of this guy who is a music mogul. His name is Smokey Robinson. It's very famous. And he said, I'm not, I don't like this label of African American. I'm not African American. I'm Black American. And he said, because I belong to America. I mean, I was taken aback. So that to me, I've heard everything, but that's my first time hearing that. And
what?
It's a complete, I say I belong to America. I'm not African. I'm not African. I'm not, and he's really Black. It's a Black man. So that to me is a Tabata, really.
Cole, what's your Tabata of the week?
Tabata is Mohammed being shocked that a man who's mostly Native American and white would say he belongs to America. No, I'm just joking. Smokey Robinson, whatever. Yeah, so here's what I have so many things I can complain about. But for me, the greatest Tabata has been this people behaving as though there's a rape pandemic in Liberia, and just watching people's responses to rapes being more reported. And I remember reading a post by someone whose name I won't mention that said, women, where are your voices? That kind of thing. And as if women are running around raping women and children. So for me, the greatest Tabata is people not even understanding why we're hearing about rape more. It's because of women's voices. The reason we know that children and women and babies even are being raped is because women are swallowing their fears and mustering up the courage in situations where they themselves are being abused, and going forward with their children and saying, hey, this is happening. The culture is shifting. The culture is shifting where people know that they can report rape. This is a step in the right direction. And so the tabata for me is for us not to recognize that the fact that this stuff is making the news and creating public outrage is a step in the right direction.
Thank you. Mr. Kuni.
You know, there is a very good reason to run away from me, because I told him I was going to make him a tabata for the week.
Oh, Dennis and tabata.
I was talking about the issue in Ukraine and trying to see how we can help the Liberians that are in Ukraine. And he had the audacity to come tell me that I hope you don't got client in Ukraine. You can look at old man like me to come to I get client that the tabata he told me today. And I told him that he was going to be my tabata for the day.
Oh, I thought you were a social worker. You don't have client. Let me go to Masa. Masa, what's your tabata of the week? Oh,
a meme of somebody tried to be comical concerning the situation in Ukraine, and the Ghanaian president and the Ghanaian authorities are trying to get the students out of Ukraine, but some Liberians are so creative, they make me laugh a lot. Mm-hmm. Somebody did a cartoon, and the word is that President Weah told Liberian the students in Ukraine to go in the bush and hide. So I thought it was very funny. It just sounded so Liberian to me. It's like something is happening, go just run in the bush and hide. So it was very funny. That for me, I know that was the tabata of the week for me.
Ambassador Barnes, what's your tabata of the week?
Well, I don't know if you, based on how you describe this tabata, my concern, I don't know if it can be described as such, is watching the development out of Ukraine sort of makes me wonder, why is it that the world sees European refugees as being at a higher level, higher standard than other refugees? Why are we treating the Africans and the Asians and the people from other continents as substandards that do not deserve to be treated with dignity and respect? But Europeans have some sort of special treatment. I just find it very, very interesting and a real black mark against our common humanity. I don't know if it fits the category of a tabata, but
tabata is a big tabata.
Whatever you make it to be, that's tabata.
There you go. Thank you.
Yeah,
but that's mine.
And we have our viewer here, Maki Manu say, my tabata is why people have to tell the GOL before they do their job. And Eve say, my biggest tabata is the police operation in New Georgia. Police apprehended a young guy simply because he was running. And the guy said, I'm running because I see people running. What do you expect me to do? I don't know where you saw this other news. And like the people in the car say, oh, stop, the tires turning. Mm-hmm. My tabata of the week is how we have consistently treated education. As I said before during the show, we are not teaching people to solve the problems in their community, and that to me is the biggest tabata. Education is supposed to solve problems. We can just teach, after the war, we still doing Joseph Jacob Roberts, Stephen A. We don't know what. Thank you to all of you.
Leave Stephen Allen Benson. That joke.
C-A-T, R-A-T, man.
What?
Yeah, okay, yeah, same thing,
right? I was teaching the growers school. I was in Pamas. Oh.
Thank you so much for your time tonight. Time is fast now, it's after 9, so let me give you 30 seconds each, just your closing comment, just one sentence. Let me start with Masa.
Thank you so much for this forum, Dennis. I think it was very good that we had the opportunity to engage in Ambassador Barnes, and I wish him all the best with his campaign. I think he has the he has the credentials, and so Ambassador Barnes, wish you well in your endeavors, and to all of my or panelists, it was nice seeing you again. But one last question for the ambassador.
No more question, Massa. We're
No more
ending.
question.
Yeah, we're ending.
Okay.
Masha, you have my number. Call me.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. All right.
Mohammed,
okay,
your closing comment, Mohammed.
Okay, so this is a very good discussion. At the conclusion of the Liberian Civil War, there were really unresolved issues, and so it seems as if the war never really ended. It ended, the violence, all the shooting and stuff went on, did end, but the different things during the war never ended. For instance, at this time, since we're talking about we just talked about rape, there were women from Mandingo women, thousands of them, who were adopted and taken behind rebel lines. Some of them never made it back to their family members, and today they're still held in some of those places. So these are really touchy issues. So when we discuss these things, we should discuss them in those kind of global contexts. So it is my hope that, one of these days that there will be a leader or a group of leaders who will push our country forward, who will look at some of these things, the issue of poverty, the issue of lack of education, lack of health care, and all of the different things that we've talked about, and lead, because it can be done. Look at Rwanda. It's possible.
Thank you. Call.
I think that my parting message is that for everyone to understand the context of everything that happens, and knowing your own history and your own place in the world is extremely important. This concept that white people constitute a superior race, and therefore they dominate societies, and all other races are inferior, and that African people are at the bottom of the totem pole. This is not historical mythology. This is a living, breathing fact of life, and this is why the world is structured the way it is. This is why our resources are being sucked out from under us. This is why they encourage and help perpetuate dysfunctional governments, dysfunctional education system. This is why the whole system of miseducation continues in places like Liberia, because it is to the benefit of the system. And until we understand that, we won't understand anything else. And looking at people saying, "Oh my God, these are blue-eyed babies dying," oh my God. It is because this has become not only internalized by the beneficiaries of white supremacy, but Africans ourselves are white supremacists. And we weep for white babies more than we weep for our own. Until that changes, that's what it is.
Thank you, Carl. Mr. Cooney.
Yes, well, frankly, I want to thank Ambassador Barnes at least for introducing.
Carl, face your camera, please. It's kind of sideways. Go ahead.
I want to thank the ambassador for introducing issue-oriented political campaign. I love the democratic space. I like the free flow of ideas. We may not agree. We may disagree on some, but I like the issue. I like issue-oriented campaign. The ambassador has put forth some real national issues here that require us to look at. I think it is refreshing to hear a politician presenting issues as opposed to the mess that has been happening in the CPP for almost 3 years. They're fighting over some kind of document that's supposed to be framework document. We don't know where they stand on any issue, absolutely no issue, no leadership, no vision. So, it's refreshing to see someone coming up and say, you know what, I want the presidency of Liberia, but these are the issues that are important to me. Come and I'm inviting you for us to have that discussion. And so, Ambassador Barnes, I want to encourage you to continue to present your case to the Liberian people, and let's have a spirited debate on the issues.
Thank you. Ambassador Barnes, you have the last word.
Thank you very much. First of all, I'd like to express my humility and deep appreciation to all of the panelists. I made notes. I found it's very, very invigorating and refreshing. I appreciate all of your efforts and your input. The only thing I can say to the group, to Liberians, all Liberians out there in all 16 counties of Liberia, please, whatever you do, remember the 3 cardinal questions. What do we want? What must we do to get what we want? Are we willing and prepared to do what we must do to get what we want? Once we can honestly address and embrace these 3 cardinal questions, we'll be on the platform to take off on a new trajectory for peace, prosperity, and goodwill for all of us. God bless Liberia. God bless all of you. Thank you.
On that note, we say good night and thank you so much. As always, we end with our song that says, we are all Liberians. Whether you are dual citizen or mono citizen, we are all Liberians. Whether you believe that Liberia has been stuck and is not growing for the past 42 years, we are all Liberians. Whether you believe that we are all interconnected and so there should be no war crime code, just like the current vice president, we are all Liberians. What is incumbent upon all of us now is to work, do our very best to make Liberia the glorious land of liberty. Have a good night and God bless you.
We are Liberia. Liberia is our home. Liberia people. Liberia.